Hi guys, my name's Olivia and I'm an instructor here at the Kansas City Zoo. When I am not here hanging out with the animals, I'm also a third grade teacher. And I know something my kids have been loving when they are at home during this time is some read-alouds. So we thought our penguin friends might like to have some books read aloud to them too. So today we are going to read Lucky, which is by Monica Engbreston. And we thought because this is a bird just like they are, that they might be interested in hearing about it. The Spice Islands are a magical place between the Indian and Pacific Oceans where nutmeg trees grow wild. Smell of sweet cloves drift on the breeze, and each day begins with the sound of parrots screeching their greetings to the morning sun. One of these islands lives a species of parrots called rainbow lorikeets, a name that describes them perfectly. Among them was a rainbow lorikeet named Lucky, a name that has not always suited him. One day, Lucky was flying through the forest with his friends and family, called a flock, and they stopped on a flowering tree to lap up the sweet nectar. The tip of the lorikeet's tongue looks like a tiny brush, perfectly designed for sweeping up nectar. When it was time to fly to the next tree, Lucky realized that there was a string tightening around his foot. He flapped his wings as hard as he could and screamed out, "Whack, whack, whack!" But no one could help him. Most of Lucky's flock flew away when the man climbed the tree and wrapped his glove-covered fingers around Lucky, pinning his wings to his sides. Lucky's mother and father stayed on the nearby branch and scolded the man, but the man did not pay attention to their cries. The man shoved Lucky in a bag. The sudden darkness of the bag confused Lucky, and he stopped calling out and just listened. The news of his capture had spread through the forest. The Moluccan cockatoos flying overhead began shouting out, "Ewok, ewok," warning others that the trappers had come into the forest, but it was too late for Lucky. After a long journey, Lucky was removed from the bag and a chain was placed around his leg and attached to the sides of a triangle made of sticks. The triangle holding Lucky was hung on the ledge of a shop. Surrounding Lucky were baskets, clay pots, and colorful wraps known as sarongs. Many people clamored through the streets in front of the shop. It frightened Lucky to be surrounded by so many people. A man wearing a yellow cap stopped and looked directly at Lucky. "My son Kherson loves birds," he said. "This will make the perfect gift." The man with the yellow cap handed the shopkeeper some coins in exchange for Lucky. Lucky squawked and screamed when the shopkeeper reached up towards him to the shop's ledge and lifted the triangle he was chained to. Once again, Lucky was placed inside a bag. He grew quiet in the darkness that surrounded him. When Lucky was again removed from the bag, a grinning 12-year-old boy named Kherson greeted him. "My very own bird! Thank you, Papa," he exclaimed. Kherson hung the triangle holding Lucky on the edge of his house, so everyone in the village could see. It made Kherson feel special when his friends came over to look at and admire Lucky's beautiful rainbow-colored feathers. Kherson attached a small bowl to the triangle that held Lucky and filled it with white rice and sweet tea. Lucky did not recognize this food. He wanted fruit, nectar, and fresh water. But Kherson did not understand. Eventually, Lucky gave in to his thirst and hunger and began to sample the rice and tea, eating just enough to ease his hunger. Day after day, Lucky sat in that triangle, and every day he bit the terrible chain to test if it would grow weak, but it never did. He tried to bite Kherson every day too, and sometimes he did. Lucky's bites hurt Kherson's fingers, but they hurt his feelings more. Kherson wanted so badly for Lucky to like him, but Lucky did not trust anyone. In an attempt to calm Lucky, Kherson often just sat quietly and watched as Lucky paced back and forth on his small perch and listened to Lucky as he called out to the sun each morning, as all parrots on the island do. Sometimes, Lucky would hang off the triangle by his chained leg. Perhaps it was fun for him to imagine that the whole world had turned upside down and not just him. Sometimes, while hanging, Lucky would flap his wings as hard as he could, as if he were flying. It felt good for Lucky to use his wings, even if they could not take him anywhere. Perhaps he also thought about all the other things he used to do. One day, on the way home from school, Kherson saw a flock of rainbow lorikeets swoosh through the trees and land on a banana tree. He watched as they chattered excitedly and ate the sweet fruit. Kherson picked up one of the bananas and ran home to Lucky. When Lucky saw Kherson's arm extending towards him, he opened his beak and prepared to bite Kherson's finger, but he bit into a banana instead. The sweet taste filled his mouth and his heart with joy. Lucky bit into the banana over and over again. He was so excited about the banana, he didn't notice, or didn't care, that Kherson was petting his head as he ate. From that day forward, Kherson brought Lucky a banana each day, and Lucky would chatter excitedly when he heard Kherson's footsteps coming down the path. One day, while feeding Lucky, Kherson thought about the birds he had seen flying through the forest and happily chattering with each other. A terrible sadness welled up in his heart as he glanced down at the chain on Lucky's leg. He imagined what it would be like if he were chained to a perch or confined to his room day after day. How terribly lonely and boring life would be, he thought. Kherson set the banana down and walked inside his house. When he returned, he carried a small towel and a pair of wire cutters. He lowered the perch from the ledge and placed the towel over Lucky's head to prevent Lucky from biting him. Snap! Clank! Confused and frightened by Kherson's behavior, Lucky called out, "Walk, walk, walk!" as if to say, "Help, help, help!" Then, Lucky felt a tug at his chained leg, and Kherson carefully placed the wire clippers around the wire that surrounded Lucky's leg. Snap! Clank! The chain broke and fell to the floor. Kherson released his grasp on Lucky and unfolded the towel. Lucky rubbed his beak up and down the sides of his leg and chattered excitedly. Kherson carried Lucky to the tree beside his house. Lucky jumped towards the tree and flapped his wings as hard as he could and fell to the ground in a heap of ruffled feathers and dust. Kherson's heart sank. In the months of being chained to the perch, Lucky's muscles had grown weak from lack of exercise. Would Lucky ever fly again? Kherson wondered. Lucky seemed heartbroken too. Kherson bent over to pick up the bewildered little bird, and to his surprise, Lucky didn't try to bite him. Kherson gently placed Lucky in the tree. Even if Lucky could not fly, surely the tree would be a more interesting place for him to live, he thought. Lucky soon discovered that he could jump between the branches and fly short distances within the tree. However, when he tried to fly away from the tree, he always fell to the ground. Each time he flew, he shook the dust off, walked back to the base of the tree, and used his beak and feet to climb back up. If Kherson were nearby when Lucky fell, he would pick him up and put him back in the tree. As the weeks passed, Lucky's wings became stronger and stronger, and soon he was able to fly around the village, but he never strayed too far from Kherson's home. Just as always, Kherson brought a banana home each day when he returned from school and scratched Lucky's head as he ate. On the way home from school one day, Kherson again saw the flock of rainbow lorikeets on the banana tree. As he approached, they took off in a burst of color and chatter and headed towards his village. Excitement and fear surged through Kherson's body. He hoped Lucky would see the flock, and at the same time, he hoped Lucky wouldn't see the flock. With this mix of emotions in his heart, he ran down the trail towards home as fast as he could. Kherson saw the flock of lorikeets just outside his village. The flock had stopped and were gathered in a nearby flowering tree, lapping nectar with their brush-like tongues and chattering quietly among themselves. He jogged down the path towards the village and was relieved to see Lucky perched contently inside his trees. As always, Lucky squawked excitedly when he saw Kherson. But then, something unusual happened. Lucky's squawks were answered. Lucky sat straight up and opened his eyes wide. He let out a shrill reep, 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 as if to say, "Who's there? Who's there? Who's there?" The flock of lorikeets replied in a rumble of calling voices, as if they were yelling out their names at once. The flock flew closer until they were in view of Lucky and Kherson. But they seemed extremely wary of Kherson, and Lucky seemed wary of the flock as he hesitated to fly closer to them, despite his curiosity. "This is your chance to return to freedom," Kherson whispered. With that, he turned and walked into his house. As soon as Kherson was out of view, 4 lorikeets split off from the flock and flew to Lucky's tree. They chattered back and forth as if discussing Lucky's situation. When the 4 birds flew back to the flock, Lucky went with them. Kherson watched as Lucky and the flock disappeared into the forest. "I love you, Lucky, and I understand," he shouted, and he wiped a tear from his eyes. Kherson never stopped caring about birds. When he grew up, he created a place where trapped birds were freed from their chains, given time to regain their strength and an opportunity to fly to freedom, just like Lucky did. Perhaps Lucky's name suited him well, after all. Thanks for watching us here at the Kansas City Zoo. Even though we're closed, we hope you're enjoying the content that we're posting, and we hope to see you guys soon.